Well, good morning. Good morning, Grant. Happy Valentine's Day. Before we totally get started this morning, we have a couple representatives, actually, from Camp Assurance up in Nebraska. So they're going to share a couple words for us this morning, and then we'll get started.
Great. Thanks, Josiah. So a verse that's kind of been radioactive in my life lately is Psalm 32, 1 and 2. Blessed is the one whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man whom the Lord counts no iniquity. And I am so grateful that God opened my eyes to the fact that I was a sinner and I needed that covered and I couldn't do it myself. And I look around northeast Nebraska where we're ministering, and I think of all the people who have a taste of religion, but they don't have that assurance that it's covered by Jesus because they're still trying to cover it themselves. And so that's the environment we're in northeast Nebraska. Very religious, very tempting to be upstanding, but there's just not a lot of gospel light. And we direct a little Bible camp. We're area missionaries. We've had interns come and do kind of rural ministry internships with us. We're well connected with Child Evangelism Fellowship, RHMA. There may even be like a church plant coming online for us even in weeks to come. So if you're looking for an internship in the off season, that's something to consider. But the big thing we do is a camp in the summer, and we're looking for just 2 or 3 people to apply. And if you apply quickly, you might be able to beat Grant out of a summer job. Or maybe you'll get to serve alongside him. I don't know. But we do 11 weeks of ministry. If you want to grow in sharing the gospel one-on-one with kids and youth, if you want to do it in a face-to-face discipleship environment with a team that's building you up, encouraging you all the summer, please consider coming and visiting with us.
Shannon usually leaves some details for me, but he took a lot of them. No, but I would just say that I had the opportunity to serve as a missionary in Central Asia for about 11 years before I met Shannon. And I'm amazed at coming back to the States and being involved in ministry together at this camp in Nebraska. Our focus, we're really more of a missions team. Camp is one avenue for that, but our focus is the gospel in this part of America, which is really quite needy. And the first 4 weeks of the summer are training and outreach. So it's one of our most exciting times. We get to gather as teams at camp and then go out into area towns that have not much gospel witness and do 5-day clubs with Child Evangelism Fellowship programming. But it's a great opportunity to go out and share your faith, reach out, and then come back to camp in the evening, share God's sightings, what you've seen God do. And it's a great, also, if you were to come and serve, we have the gospel as our priority, and then mentoring. We have a lot of high school, junior high people who will serve in the summer, and as a college student, you'll have a chance to pour into them and see them be raised up to take steps of faith. So I guess just comparing the ministry in Kyrgyzstan to this one, I think I share the gospel more here in Nebraska than I even did in Kyrgyzstan. So it's a great mission opportunity that's not very expensive and not that far away.
Okay. So camp ministry's fun. Professor Paxton is coming to speak at teen camp, which we're excited about. But it's not for the faint of heart. You leave it all in the field, but you're on a team. So if you want to talk to us, we'd love to visit. And my wife makes really good food, and we might have a few cookie bars if you want to come visit with us that she made yesterday.
How long are you guys planning on sticking around today? Perfect. Cool. So go connect with them if anything that they said interests you, and go talk to them. They're great people to talk to. Our speaker for today is someone who has been around Calvary for longer than I have. Too long, she says. She's coached, she's taught, and she even had a little brief stint there last year as the athletic director. So we're very excited to what you have to share with us, Coach T.
So as I was thinking about what I was going to share with you guys today, I thought You know, Jesus spoke a lot in parables, and I just wanted to share a story of what happened this summer, and something that God really just kind of spoke to me about, and it has to do with a trek in the Arkansas mountains. And so I have some props and just an object lesson, so bear with me as I get set up. Okay, so one of the things about going on a trek is that you have to really prepare for it, right? And this particular trek was done with a couple of interns. So this past summer I worked at Living Waters Canoe Ministry, which is about 2 hours south of here. And it ministers to a bunch of different varieties of groups with a trek down the river. And so one of the things that we did in this program with the interns is that we would take them on a trek someplace different. And so myself and the leadership decided, well, let's go to the Buffalo River because that's not very far away, and it would provide a lot of great teaching opportunities. This is not someplace that I've ever been before, which is a little bit more difficult because when you haven't been someplace before, it can get a little nerve-wracking because you don't know what to expect. And that's kind of what happened on this trek. There was a lot of things that we didn't expect. One of those things being is that in Arkansas, and Kenley probably knows this more than anybody, but in Arkansas, when you get to the end of June, it gets really hot. And in this particular situation, there had been a drought, and it was the heat index of 105 degrees. And so that's pretty hot when you're trying to go up a couple mountains. But let me show you a little bit about what it's like to pack for a trek, because it takes a lot for a human being to survive for 3 days. I'm not going to throw these, but of course you have to have pots and you have to have other types of cookware. And then of course you have to have and then of course yeah. So a pack like this for 3 days is going to weigh about 50 to 75 pounds. And that's what it takes to be able to survive. You've got a bunch of water. And in this situation, we had to carry a lot of water because we were in a drought. So the Buffalo River is supposed to be a place where there's a lot of water running. We were expecting that we would be able to just filter our water as we went along, so we didn't think that we'd have to have a lot of water. But at the end, we had to pack in water for this particular trek, which made it a little bit more difficult. So as we were getting ready, we stopped at a couple different places because it's always good to find out from everybody else what's going on in different national parks. And one of those things was we had to talk to a ranger. And the ranger had mentioned that because of the drought, there were a lot of snakes around, so be careful. In particular, a lot of copperheads. And he said, take lots of water and hike when it's cool. So our first day, we get down there, we set up camp, and again, we're hiking away from our truck. And this was going to be 3 days. We had another vehicle at the end of our trek, and so we had mapped it out to completion. And as we got our camp set up, we realized that it was pretty hot already at night. It was getting pretty humid, and so we went down and we had a little bit of pools of water, so we were able to go and relax and have a good time. But already we could tell that there were a lot of snakes. And so I hate snakes. I hate them with a passion. And that wasn't very fun for me. But you push through. And so the next morning we get up, and we didn't get up as early as we should have. And that was our first mistake. And we get up to the first elevation point, which is called Fisher Point. It's about 1,500 feet of elevation from where we were at. So it's a pretty steep climb. But then our next point was going to be Kilgore Mountain, which is one of the highest peaks in Arkansas. And that lands you about 2,500 feet of elevation. So again, a pretty high climb as we're going along. And so as we start up the second mountain, things started to get a little bit more difficult. And what I mean by that was that our packs, fully furnished, fully decked out, were getting pretty heavy. And as we're climbing, we're drinking water, we're doing what we need to. We get these little hydration packs, which we thought were going to work. They didn't end up working, but we put those in our water bottles as well. And it was about halfway up the mountain that myself and one of the intern, his name is Tanner, started to get some pretty extreme muscle cramps. And those muscle cramps didn't let up. And that's one of the things with hiking is that when you start getting muscle cramps, you probably need to sit down and rest a little bit more. But we had trained for a month or two prior to going on this trek, so we thought we were pretty good. So we stopped a little bit, ate some food, drank some water, and then just kept going. Again, the heat index is 105 degrees. And so as you're sweating, the sweat is just coming right off of you and evaporating. So you don't really know how much water you're letting off, except for the fact that you understand how much water you need, and that's about it. And so you're trying to pace out that water, you're trying to pace yourself out. But again, that climb is pretty steep. And so as we continue to go up the mountain, our cramps get worse and worse and worse. But my husband, Jeff, who's a pilot in the Air Force, is marching along happily, and so is the other intern. And so we thought, well, maybe it's just the two of us that are having these problems. We get to the top, and we thought, well, okay, everything's fine now because we're done climbing. And Tanner has heat exhaustion. And so he just falls asleep. And he falls into a pretty deep sleep, which is just another sign that your body is trying to cool down. And once your body cools down, you kind of wake up and you just keep going again. So we gave him water, we did what we could to get him cooled off. But again, that heat index is pretty oppressive. And so he wakes up about 20 minutes later. We rest a little bit more, but we know that we have to get back down before it gets dark, before all the snakes start coming out. So we start going down, and the cramps for both him and I are not letting up. We're still experiencing that. And I just want to stop there for a second, because the point is that when we look at our lives, what are some things that weigh us down? One of the big things, I think, is that we have a lot of unforgiveness in our lives. We don't like to forgive people who hurt us really bad. We don't like to forgive people who flake out on us, who are making jokes and really hurt us pretty bad, or people who have lost trust with us, who have betrayed us. We don't like to forgive those because we have so much hurt. And that hurt really does prevent us. It stops us from forgiveness sometimes. One of the things that it says in Proverbs 17:9 is love prospers when a fault is forgiven, but dwelling on it separates close friends. If we forgive, we have a chance at continuing that friendship. But when we don't forgive, it seems like, and in Proverbs, it talks about it separates close friends. And one of the things that happens is that we get wrapped up in bitterness, because if we don't start forgiving, the next step is the bitterness. The next step is slander. It's the malice. It's the rage. It's the anger. It's all of those things. And Ephesians talks about getting rid of all of that and instead being kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ, God, forgave you. But forgiveness, and this is one of the hardest parts of it, is that it's not a feeling. It's a decision. But we get wrapped up in our feelings, and we can't make that decision. It's like we're blindsided a lot of times. And so what do? We hold on to it. So I'm going to ask you guys to give me back all the things, but I kind of want to attribute it to what we experience, because everything, the slander, the malice, all of that, it weighs us down. It weighs us down. And so, Kenley, what do you have? The toilet paper, right? And so this is malice. We like to talk bad about people who hurt us, right? We like to hold on to those things. What you got? Nice chest pass. Yes, the sleeping bag, which is not a whole lot of weight, but again, all of these things add up, right? And so we've got that bitterness that just hangs on. And the thing about bitterness is it's like a blanket. It covers us when we let it take root. The way that it got packed up. The next thing is rage. And we can get pretty angry with people, right? Again, it's another feeling, and it's another negative feeling that continues to hold us down. Basketball player. The next one is brawling. So when we don't forgive, what happens? We continue to argue with that person or people that are in our lives. Oh, almost a spin. And then the next one is slander. And a lot of times, we like to just talk bad about people, especially when they've hurt us. And this is not like the deep-seated abuse type things that happen and occur, but it's the everyday things that happen. And it's hard to give that grace, right? And so that's the next one, is when we don't give grace. And we instead just let it mount up. All right, I'm going to leave this down for a second. And we've got the food. Okay. So again, we're going up a pretty intense elevation. And both Tanner and I are experiencing a lot of cramps. When you go down in elevation, in some ways that's harder for your body to adapt to, especially when you're going down 2,500 feet. So if you think about taking this pack and going down the stairs for about 2 hours, then that's pretty much what it is. Okay, so what happened, part 2 of this story, is that as we're going down, and again, you're looking at the cramps that are happening in your quad muscles, and they're tight. They're as tight as rocks. And it gets to the point where the pain gets pretty intense. And so Jeff, who is just fine, turns to me and says, "Hey, can I just take the pack from you? I will carry both packs." And of course, my pride gets in the way, and I'm like, "No, I want to hold on to my pack. I can do this myself." And he said, "But you're hurting." And I said, "I don't care, because I want to keep going the way that I'm going, and I think I can make it with the pack on my back." So we keep going down, 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 down. And then this little bit of resentment creeps up into my mind towards Jeff, because I have the tent. He doesn't have the tent. Not that he doesn't have a lot of other things, but he doesn't have the tent that we stay in. And so I'm thinking to myself, as I'm like going down this hill, he should be carrying the tent. I shouldn't be carrying it. That's why I'm getting these cramps. And so we get to a stopping point, and I tell him, "Hey, I need you to just carry the tent. That's probably all that I need you to carry for me." And so he grabs it, and he puts it in his pack. And we keep going down. And again, it's not letting up. Now it's every step is a cramp. Every step. And so Tanner is lethargic. I'm going down with cramps. And my legs are getting pretty shaky. And I knew that if I didn't stop or do something different, that neither one of us were going to get down the mountain by nightfall. And so finally I stop, and I said, "Okay, Jeff, I will let you have my pack." So Shane, if you'll come up here for a second. All right, put on that 50-pound pack. Okay, now put this on like this. Okay, so that's how Jeff carried both packs. And we still had a mile left to go at getting downhill. And again, it's 105 degrees, and he is covered in 2 packs, which means that, again, he has to have a lot more water than what he has. And then we still have Tanner, who's a little bit lethargic, a little bit confused, trying to get down the mountain. And so what I want to point out here is that God doesn't mean for us to carry our unforgiveness around. He wants to take it from us, and he's asking for it. And even though Jeff had said, "Can I just take your pack from you?" And I said, "No, I want to hold on to it." How many times do we hold on to that bitterness in our lives? We want to hold on to it. Sometimes we want to live in it, and we shouldn't, because it's a weight. And it's such a big weight that it gets exhausting. And we get to the point where now it's impacting not just ourselves, but it's impacting everybody else around us. If I didn't give him my pack, we would not get down the mountain by the time it was dark. It was now becoming unsafe for me to carry the pack for everybody else. And so even as we continue to go day to day with the hurt and the bitterness that we have in our lives, when we get to that point of exhaustion, we've got to look inward and say, what am I doing? Why am I carrying this around? And why am I not doing something to seek resolution? Why am I not doing something to figure out how I can heal from this? Because the first step to healing is forgiveness, is to be able to let it go and to give it away. And even though I was only willing to give the tent away, which, by the way, it only weighs about 3 pounds, even though I was only able to give that away, it still wasn't enough. I had to give my entire pack to him. And then once I did, my body started cooling down, the cramps started going away, and by the time we reached the end, which was kind of a good thing because we actually encountered some wild boars that we had to almost run away from. And so it was a good thing that I gave it to him because he was fine. He could carry both. It wasn't a problem for him, and he continued to outmarch us all, even though he had 2 packs on himself. Thanks, Shane. There's a story in the Bible where Peter asked Jesus, "How many times shall I forgive my brother or sister?" And we've all heard this story. And he asks, is it up to 7 times? And back then, the norm was 3. You could forgive somebody 3 times, and then you didn't have to forgive them anymore. And so Peter was, in his mind, I'm going to do 7. 7's impressive. I'm going to do that. And Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. And we think about that, and even now, can you imagine forgiving one person 70 times 7? One person. We don't do it. We have a tendency to end that relationship and we walk away. But the story continues because then he talks about a parable, right? And he talks about the servant who owed a great debt, an incredible amount of debt, more than anybody could ever pay off in a lifetime. And this is found in Matthew 18 if you guys don't know where it's located. And the master, of course, forgives the debt, and then he turns around, and what does he do? He doesn't forgive his fellow person, his fellow servant, a debt that he owed. And what did the master do? He confronted him about it, right? And he actually gave him the original consequences. But I think about us, and I think about how many times God forgives us every single day, and sometimes over and over in a day. And that's a huge debt. And it's a debt that we could never repay, and yet he does it. And when we forgive somebody, it's a picture of how often he does it. And it's so hard sometimes to forgive somebody who truly, truly does hurt us. But it's a picture. It's what he did for us. And I think a lot of times when we have the opportunity to forgive somebody, said opportunity, when we have an opportunity to forgive somebody, what does that do? That gives us the opportunity to revisit the fact that we are sinners and that we are in need of forgiveness every single day. And so when we let that unforgiveness be carried around like a burden, what we're essentially doing is we're saying, I'm taking control over my life. Nobody else has it. I'm going to keep it. But forgiveness will set you free, and it will help you to release the wrongdoer of all of those expectations, and it'll give you a peace of mind. Because I know that sometimes we walk around this campus with unforgiveness. We walk around this campus with people that have sinned against us or have done something to us, and we look at that person and we don't think of them as God's creation. Instead, we look at them like they have done an awful thing to us, when in reality, we have done an awful thing to God. And so instead, we're supposed to bear with each other and forgive one another just as God forgave us. And that's what God is reminding us of. So, back to the story. We get down the mountain, and we get down in time. It was about 5 o'clock. We should have been there by about 2:30. And instead, we got there at 5. But still a lot of daylight left. So we set up camp. So shockingly, there was some water in the river. And so we were able to cool ourselves off. Tanner and I both got back to ourselves, and we ate a great supper, and we started getting ready for bed. And so it was night. We get, we get our teeth brushed. There were some bathrooms there. There's actually a way to drive into this location, even though that's not what we did. There was a way to drive in, but there was only one other group there, and that was a group of Boy Scouts. And as we're getting ready for bed, we shut the lights out, and then I hear, "I just got bit by a snake, guys." And it was Tanner. And I thought, oh my goodness, he is joking. This is a prank. And I get out of the tent, I'm like, "Are you serious?" And he's like, "Yes, I am dead serious. I just got bit by a snake." And so I looked down, and he had gotten bitten right here. And Tanner was wearing Crocs, which is not something you want to wear. But in his mind, he thought, well, you know what? If I wear these hiking shoes for a long time, and my feet are sore, the Crocs will be great for just massaging the tissue and stuff in my feet. And so in his mind, that was a great idea. But what did the ranger say? He said, "Beware of snakes." He said, "Beware of copperheads," and copperheads are a venomous snake. And so there's blood running down. And usually when a copperhead bites you, somebody needs to go kill it. And so Sam, the other intern, takes off right away. And it's at night. It's dark. And as Sam is going, Tanner tells me, the snake didn't just bite me, it chased after me. And so when Jeff heard that, of course, then he goes running to go and try. And when Jeff shows up, the snake and Sam are going back and forth. Like, this is a really aggressive copperhead. And it's about 3.5 feet long. And so the snake realizes there's 2 big heat sources. Now I'm outnumbered. Now I cannot do anything. And so it starts taking off. Both of them are running with sticks. And, of course, they didn't kill it. But as they're doing that, I'm looking at Tanner, making sure he's okay, trying to calm him down so that way the adrenaline doesn't get the best of him. And there's only one other group there, and that was the Boy Scouts. Yay, Boy Scouts. And so we go to the Boy Scouts, and I asked them, hey, can you just give us a ride back to the truck? They said, sure. And so we get Tanner into the truck, and because a copperhead is venomous, you don't really know how much venom is in your leg necessarily. The first bite is considered a warning bite. The second bite is meant to kill. And so he only got bit once, but again, it was an adult copperhead. So we didn't know what the situation really was, and his foot started to swell. And so he's freaking out a little bit. So we're trying to calm him down. We get to the truck. It was about a 20-minute drive. We get to the truck, and then Jeff just takes down the Arkansas roads, which Kenny knows about because they're really curvy and windy. And we get to a hospital, and they look at him and assess that, yes, he does have venom in his leg, and so we need to take him to a different hospital in Rogers. And so we drive another hour and a half there, and then he gets taken care of. In the process of all of this, all of our stuff is still at the camp. And so Jeff and I had to drive 2.5 hours back to grab all of our stuff. But all of this to say is, because Tanner was so exhausted from carrying that pack, and because he wasn't necessarily taking in everything that was around him, and he was just traveling with his flashlight, going back from the shower house to come back after brushing his teeth, and he wasn't really looking around, the snake got him. And the other thing that I didn't mention was that there were 2 other copperheads as well that we discovered. And so when we are in this process, a lot of times the bitterness can blindside us so much, and we can get so centered around what has happened to us, and this person has done this, and this person has done that, because bitterness isn't a one-time gig. If we have a habit of creating bitterness in our lives, it's going to infiltrate every other relationship that we have. We're always afraid of getting insulted. We're always afraid of getting hurt by this person or that person. And this is something that happens to us and can happen to us, but we have to understand that when we get to the point where everybody has hurt us, we become isolated. And that's where Satan can even do more damage. Because when we let bitterness take hold, when we let slander take hold and malice take hold, what happens is it becomes a slow fade, guys. It doesn't end there. It's still sin. And in Hebrews, it talks about letting us take away the sin that entangles us, right? And what? To run the race that's set out before us. And some of those things is the malice, is the slander, is the unforgiveness that we hold on to for us to hold on to people. So what do? How do we fix this within our life? I just have a couple of things I'm just going to read off to you real quick. The first thing is understanding what God has done for us. The cost that he has forgiven us should allow us to have the same perspective when it comes to other people in our lives. We need to, when we talk about forgiveness, it means that we should not bring up the offense again. We shouldn't be keeping score. This is not a sport. This is not a competitive sport. Instead, we need to let things go. Unconditional forgiveness requires us to focus on somebody's worth, not their weaknesses. And remember, as people have sinned against you, you have sinned against others as well. You have hurt others. You're not blameless in this game of life. You've done the same things to other people. And so when we understand it from that perspective, we should have the humility within ourselves to say, I've done a lot of bad things in my life too. I probably need to let this go. I need to forgive, and I need to start that process of healing. When you cheat the forgiveness process, you're going to keep that unforgiveness, and you're going to not be able to restore. And remember, restoration is not for the cowardly or lazy. It's for the courageous. It's hard. It's hard to not continue to bring up things that people have done to you. It's hard not to keep the thoughts of resentment and bitterness from overwhelming us. But that's what God has called us to do in our life. And so I just challenge you guys today to not hold the pack. Instead, give it to Jesus because he wants it. He doesn't want us to carry it around. All right. I'm going to pray real quick, and then you guys are dismissed. Dear Lord, I just thank you so much for allowing these students to be here today. And Lord, as we continue throughout our day and for the upcoming months, as we live within this community of people, that we would continue to think about how much you have done for us in our lives, and in particular in that forgiveness area. And Lord, that everybody here would let some things go and start beginning that process of healing and restoration towards other people that they have in their life. And Lord, as they go through that, I just ask that you give them strength and give them courage as they continue to work through those things. And Lord, as we leave today, that you would protect us and give us a great weekend. In Jesus' name, amen.